Controlling the decision-making process. This is what selling in the B2B large complex sale is all about. What we want to do is control it, guide it, influence it, and not simply service it, not just respond to it, not just check in on it, not just touch base with them. And this is the hardest part of the complex sale. And today I've got kind of a different guest on. Doug Landis from Emergis Capital, which is a VC firm, is joining us. Now, he's not your typical partner who's looking just to do investments. He's looking to help grow the portfolio companies. And one of the elements that he tries to help them with is to have them understand how companies buy. And we get into this conversation. The real juice of it comes later in the interview. So please either stick with it or fast forward to it because it's pure gold. What we do is we talk about approval limits. And he's been a vice president of a fast-growing, well-financed startup. I've been a vice president of a Fortune 50 company. And we talk about the exact internal decision-making process and how it's really part folklore, part administration, a whole lot of politics, and so misunderstood. I shared a video on LinkedIn. You can go into my feed and search for it. I'll put it up on YouTube as well, Brian Burns Sales on YouTube, that not understanding the decision process or thinking that there's a single decision maker is the killer of your deals. And I got all this pushback from all these very senior reps, sales trainers, CEOs, and I've pushed back on them. I go, well, how much can you spend? And very few people would answer. How much do you spend without checking in with people, without getting their opinion, their buy-in, listening to their influence? There's so many elements to a decision that we kind of like cheat by saying the decision maker. What decision and what are they making? There's ones that determine whether you can come in, whether they look at your product. They may pick your product, but they still don't buy it. And we call that no decision. No, that's you not understanding the sales process. And this is critical because you're basically playing a game that you don't even know you're playing. And it's not your fault. It really isn't, because your manager probably doesn't know either. Their manager probably doesn't know. And the people who do know assume other people know. A lot of people think it's just the administrative process, the actual walking of the purchase request through the system. But it's also the political maneuvering, the roadblocks, the hidden agendas. If you've ever watched House of Cards on Netflix, you'll see that what you see is only the tip of the iceberg. What's underneath it is everyone else's personal gains. And you can say, well, that company's not like that. Every company's like that. Check out the Thornos documentary on HBO, and you'll start to understand how even the smartest people in the world get duped. And I don't mean that in a pejorative sense, though. I guess I do. That decision-making is this thing that is not formalized. And a lot of people think it is. They want to rationalize that it is. But it certainly, when you add more and more people, it becomes this very fluid thing. And to become great at the complex sale, we have to become good at it. And we have to practice it. We have to expose ourselves to the scary things that could and might happen. So let's get into the interview. I think you're really going to like this. This is one of the interviews that I think you could, I should charge for. I really should. But I'm giving it away for free because I love you, my audience, and it's a big thank you for everybody who shares my content on LinkedIn and tells one person about the brutal truth. A little something for your host here would be greatly appreciated. But before we get into it, I want to tell you, hey, have you been checking out Nudge? Nudge has got this great way of helping you understand how your company is connected to your market, your prospects, your customers. By what they do is they use AI, they search email boxes, and they do correlations, they search social, and they tell you what they care about, they tell you how you're connected, and the strength of the relationships between the two organizations and the easiest way to get into an organization. Go figure. Imagine how powerful that would be if you could actually leverage that. So make sure you're checking that out. Also, Co-Video. Co-Video is crushing it. Check out their YouTube channel, Co-Video on YouTube. It shows you how to make video emails. They got a free trial. Download it, try it. You have it on your smartphone. It really is one of the things that's going to help you crush it here in 2019. Let's get into the interview. I'll sum it up at the end and give you an update on what's going on in the classes. Hey, Doug, thanks for joining us today as a way of getting started. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you, Brian. Thanks, everybody, for listening. My name is Doug Landis. I'm a growth partner at Emergence Capital. Does not mean that I do growth, quote-unquote, investments per se. It means I'm hyper-focused on how do we collectively as an organization help our portfolio companies scale and grow beyond the 1 to 2 million that they typically have in terms of revenue when they come join our firm or join our cohort of portfolio companies. So at the end of the day, it's best way to think about it is like free go-to-market consulting for our portfolio companies, and it's a blast.
I bet it is. How'd you get involved in this? I was looking through your profile, and you were pretty much in sales most of your career. Is that true? Or
yeah. So it's kind of a unicorn opportunity, really. At the end of the day, I'm an operator at heart. I love building companies. I was fortunate enough to be at Oracle, Google, Salesforce, and Box all in the early days on both the sales side, but also on the sales productivity, sales operations side, helping. At the end of the day, one of the things I realized a long time ago is I get fulfillment, and I'm super passionate about thinking about how we can help anybody that's customer facing, so that's marketing, sales, and customer success, change the way or improve the way in which they're reaching out, identifying, engaging, and creating closing opportunities, right? Basically, how can we make customer facing teams smarter, better, faster? I've spent my whole career doing that, both as a participant and an operator, also as a leader and as a bit of a thought leader, because I've been, especially in the world of productivity, I've been in the space for a long, long time. Yeah. And interestingly enough, outside of my day job, I was already consulting and advising to a lot of startups, because a lot of startups are trying to sell to me, right? The world of sales, quote unquote, sales enablement has really blossomed, which, total side note, I have a real issue with that phrase, because enablement's not actually a word in the dictionary, a marketing term, whole nother conversation. We don't want to go down that road. But the reality is I was already kind of doing that. And as a firm, we fundamentally believe one of our core values is we want to be the most important partner to the most important companies. And which means we want to do more than just write a check. Yeah. Which means we want to take a really active role in the development and the building of the company, because in the early stages, what you build, the foundation that you build, is what allows you to scale. And to be honest, I've seen all the mistakes. I mean, every company that I've been at in the early days, we've made them all. And so, I get to help guide and kind of coach our companies around some of the things to look out for.
And what does it typically look like when you come in? And is it something that they pull you in, or is it, part of the investment? Is it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you could argue that it's part of the investment, right?
For better or worse.
Yeah. We make 6 to 8 investments a year. Typically what happens is it's a matter of, so if we're investing in a company that has, for example, we invested in a company in LA called OpenPath, and the founding team of 5 people, this is their 4th company together. They've sold 3 other companies. They don't really need a whole lot of help. They know exactly what they're doing. They have the playbook. Conversely, there's another company actually down in LA called Upkeep, first time founder, young CEO, building out a company for the first time, lots of questions. So I spent a lot of time with them and a lot less time with OpenPath as an example. And basically the kind of the MO is, as I'm engaging with a company, it's a number of things. We want to look at, like, where is the sweet spot of our customer base? Where's the low-hanging fruit? How do we make the buying process and the buying experience as frictionless as possible? How do you think about hiring, whether that's a sales leader or AEs or SDRs? How do you think about your whole operating model, right? In terms of your go-to-market? How do you think about your conversion ratios? How do you think about your messaging and positioning to your buyers? It covers the gamut on the go-to-market side, basically.
That's a lot to bite off, especially today. Well, I
It
mean,
totally is.
yeah, like you go back to like your Oracle days where it was like an enterprise sale. I don't know what it was like when you were there, but and it was a field force with inside people. You were
Yep.
on a quarterly. Sometimes you used the CRM, sometimes you didn't. It was,
Yeah. Hold on. Little correction there. Back in the days of Oracle, we didn't really have a CRM. We had green screens. We had this application called Oasis. It was custom built,
yeah,
and it was green screens. This is pre-CRM days.
yeah, and that's it. But today, operations is so critical in sales.
Yep.
There's so much data.
100%.
Yeah.
Well, there's a ton of data, and it's all about scaling, right? We found out basically from the early days of Oracle that it's like, wow, we could do 100, 250, 300, 400, $500,000 deals just over the phone. Wow, the cost of sale can drop dramatically. So what if we rethink, where it makes sense to actually have people out in the field and where it makes sense to have people actually, handling customers just purely over the phone, and hence the evolution of kind of the hardcore inside sales model and organization. Although I still firmly believe that there's a space and a place for field sellers and get in your face, in the customer's office and spending that time in front of them.
And that's it. And we started talking about that a little bit before we turned the mic or the recorder on. And that, when you put early stage or entry level people into sales, they may not know how companies buy. They're talking to somebody
100%.
who's interested, checking out the websites, fascinated with what you do, loves it. It's giving you all the signals, asks for a proposal. Of course, you give it to them. The end of the month comes and they haven't forwarded it to their manager. It's sitting in their inbox.
Right.
And
or they just go radio silent, right? That happens all the time.
Yeah, that's the norm, isn't it?
Single biggest competitor that we all have, regardless of industry, is dead no decision, right?
Yeah.
So you get all, unfortunately, salespeople, we have happy years, and someone starts giving us all the right indications that there's a deal on the table and that something could happen, and we kind of forget. We tend to lose sight of the core of the fundamentals, right?
Right.
And then deals push, or we lost them all together because the prospect doesn't pop their head back up.
And I'm sure you probably run into founders or first-time CEOs who don't understand that either, that they may be great technicians, engineers, visionaries, but understanding how a company actually does it politically and administratively is a black box to them.
Yep. Although, interestingly enough, it doesn't take long for them to really get it. As I just say, hey, if you were to buy software today, what would that process look like? Right? And then all of a sudden the CEO is like, and then I would ask him, like, would you be the primary decision maker? Well, no, because I got to check with our IT team to make sure that it's going to work, et cetera. I got to check with our sales leader, right? I got to check with all these constituents to determine whether or not this actually makes sense. As a CEO, I wouldn't be the unilateral decision maker, because the reality is that's never the case. And so, the learning opportunity is actually just to take the spotlight and shine it back on themselves and say, listen, how would you actually buy software? So now take that and think about and apply that to our prospects and customers and realize the fact that they've got their own process to buying. And we need to unpack that and discover what that is. And oh, by the way, smaller companies, their process is different than mid-market companies or enterprise companies or big strategic companies. The buying process is very different.
Right, because there's many different elements, like you were describing, like the political, interpersonal elements.
Yes.
And then there's the administrative, like how do you actually get the paperwork put in place that's legally binding?
Yeah, for sure. One of the things that's really interesting, I think a lot of people forget to talk about in a sales process is what I call change management, right? So I might, let's say I was trying to sell to you, and we have a great rapport, and you understand the value, and I've done my job of educating you in terms of why it makes sense for us to partner, and you're bought in, and maybe you've even got other people on your team bought in. But at the end of the day, that's only one step of the process. This is why the value of customer success is so important, because once you actually buy it, and we give you access to the application, of course, SaaS applications, go figure. Then you have to think about, well, how am I going to get everybody to use it?
Yeah.
Right? Because in today's world, adoption is the new ROI. Nobody can afford to buy an application that, let's say, you buy for your 100-person sales team and you only get 10, 20% adoption. Like that's
right.
Totally unacceptable.
And that's why you're investing in these companies, in that they will go viral inside the enterprise.
Well, I mean, that's certainly the hope. I mean, one of the things, at least from an investment strategy, certainly one of the things that we think about and we constantly try and dig into is, what is the daily active usage over monthly active users? They call it the DAU over MAU. So the level of engagement with your customers, with your product, is super telling. It's really, it's one of those, it feels to me like it's a new, it's kind of it's a new element that we're looking at in terms of investing. It's like, okay, could be a great idea, huge market, great team, but if people aren't actually using the product all day, every day, then the question becomes, well, what's going to get them to actually want to renew? How are you going to get them to expand?
And that's it. I just finished my taxes this weekend, and of course I'm going through all my SaaS subscriptions, right? And I'm like, what is this? How many of these do I have?
It's so true. And that's why there's a company out there called Zylo right now that'll do an assessment inside your organization to identify all of the SaaS applications that you actually have running inside your organization, and then start to identify, well, what kind of utilization are you actually getting out of those? Because a lot of people buy, especially in larger organizations, you've got like one group or one department, maybe a VP of sales bought this application for his team. He leaves or takes on a bigger role. Everyone kind of forgets about it. There's a handful of people that are using it. And oh, by the way, in a lot of our contracts, guess what happens? We put an auto renewal clause in there. So it just automatically renews. It's like, woohoo, easy money. And, and then it's totally forgotten about, and people don't even realize that they actually have all these excess licenses that are not being utilized, that they're actually paying for. And it really is a real challenge. So one of the things that I challenge, especially in the early days of an organization, one of the things I challenge our companies with is this idea of like, okay, so you land a particular deal, but we got to think through how we're going to actually make them wildly successful. And in fact, I would argue from a hiring strategy, especially in the early days, you need to go out and hire customer success first and invest a ton in customer success, because their job is to make sure that your early customers, implement, integrate, and adopt your product like crazy. And when they do, you can learn a ton about what they really think about your product, how they really see value. And in fact, I would also challenge, all of you, is to ask your customers how they present your company and your product. What do they say? And start using their words, not yours, because unfortunately, not everybody's going to trust or buy our, positioning of the product, but they'll certainly trust and buy our customers' positioning of our product, right?
Yeah, and that's the easiest revenue you can get. You've already, gone through the the paperwork shuffle, the political shuffle, and you just have to get them to get value out of it, get them to use it, get them to talk about it.
Yep.
Now, does that report into sales? What's your recommendation, or what have you seen work?
Yeah, so I think not yet. I think in some organizations it does. Look, this idea of a CRO, Chief Revenue Officer, it's something that's been around probably now for about 5 years, maybe a little longer. But the truth is I still don't believe that there are enough sales leaders that can actually wear the hat of a real CRO. Meaning they've had experience owning and running marketing, at least the demand gen part of marketing. They understand the world of customer success and the value of account management, what adoption and integration in that world looks like. And they can take responsibility and ownership for that entire chunk, right? The entire revenue function. It's really difficult. Not a lot of sales leaders don't get the opportunity to actually run marketing or run customer success. And so it's hard to say then, well, should customer success report up to the VP of sales, or should marketing, or at least demand gen, report up to the VP of sales, i.e., and then turn them into a CRO, when a lot of people just haven't had that experience. Should CS roll up under sales? Absolutely. I totally agree with that. But I also see that, more and more CS leaders are elevating are getting elevated and actually getting a seat at the table and bringing as much value on the revenue side as the VP of sales.
If they're doing things right.
Officer.
Right.
If they're doing things right. Yeah.
Because, part of their goal should be not just adoption, but domination of the account.
Right. 100%. Expansion, full utilization, right? White space analysis, the longevity of the account, renewals that are actually increasing in revenue, not decreasing in revenue. So there's definitely a huge revenue impact that customer success has.
Yeah, because it's not just a farmer type mentality.
Right.
You have to have some kind of hunter in there. And it becomes complex because then if you have sales and customer success and their objectives are not aligned, there's a conflict.
Oh yeah. Now you got some conflict, right? It's like, well, who owns
the account?
I was talking about this morning, like, okay, so how long should an AE own an account?
Yeah.
Is it 3 months? Is it 6 months? Is it 12 months? I'm a believer that the AE is, depending upon your strategy, and look, we all know this, incentives drive behavior, right? And so if you've got a seat on, it's true.
There's a rumor.
There's a rumor. I heard something about that. If you have a seed and growth strategy, then the reality is the AE, I'm doing all this upfront work to build consensus across the organization, to build the relationships, to identify the org chart, to get over the hurdle or over the hump in terms of security or compliance or, the kind of the rollout strategy. I'm doing all this work up front to land a small, we'll call it 20, 30, maybe 50K deal. And I know that there's a massive opportunity to turn this a 50K customer into a 500K customer. Guess what? I want to own that. I don't want to hand it off to somebody else. I don't want to hand it off to an account manager who, by the way, is in many cases, no offense to the account managers out there, but they didn't want to be the hunter AE, quote unquote, salesperson. So they go into account management because they like the relationship building piece, which is super important and super valuable, but it's also a different skill set than taking that 50K customer and turning them to a $500,000 customer. And so, the reality is, as AEs, I want to, get as much revenue possible out of the accounts that I have. Now, conversely, you may have a different strategy, and this is going to be totally dependent upon the strategy you have in your organization. You could have a different strategy, which is, I just want pure hunters. And so your job is to close as much possible revenue in that first deal, and then we're handing it off to somebody else because I just want you logo hunting, right? But if you have a seed and growth strategy, it's quite possible that logo hunting is just your initial revenue impact is going to be low, right? Lots of 50K deals all over the place. And meanwhile, my account managers are doing 400 or 500K deals. So now you have to do some adjustments in terms of, revenue targets, et cetera.
And have you seen, when the model matches the market, have a significant competitive advantage versus the model doesn't match the market?
In terms of a competitive advantage, I think the opportunity is you can generate a ton of revenue a lot faster.
Yeah.
If you think about it, in a lot of companies that have this land and expand model, roughly 60-65% of your revenue will end up coming from expansion. And so, if as an AE, if we have a land and expand strategy, my job then is to seed the $500,000 deal the moment I engage with a company, right? So we may start off to prove our value with a 50K deal, but guess what? I'm not doing that deal until you agree that if we do X, Y, and Z, there's an opportunity to grow this to 500K. Otherwise, I don't want to waste my time. That's how you capitalize on the opportunity as quickly as possible. If you kind of change some of your behaviors, and acknowledge the fact, like, look, I'm doing the smaller deals so that we can do a bigger deal together. And if we prove the value, then there should be no problem with that.
And how much of pushback have you gotten when you try and educate people on like this consensus selling, the understanding that it's not just a champion, it's not just the single decision maker? I've been doing this forever, and that is the number one thing. Oh no, I just talked to the decision maker. I go, what decision and what decision maker?
Right, right. Well, look, here's the crazy thing, right? So I've been fortunate enough to be a buyer of technology, millions of dollars of technology over the course of my career, and so I've been on the buying side. And again, even if you just think internally in your own organization how you guys buy software, and you realize the fact that like I may be reaching out to my buyer persona. I've got this perfect person identified. We know they're always the decision maker, but the truth is, we all know this, that behind the scenes there are at least 6 or 7 other people that are going to be involved in that decision. While you may be speaking to the one person, the reality is that's actually not the case, because there's no unilateral decision maker unless you're a tiny little company and you're the owner. It's like, exactly. Yeah, I'm making the decision.
It's
right?
Your money, you sign the check,
yeah.
and you don't
Nobody
care about the consequences.
100%. Yeah, no one else gets to say, this is my deal. But outside of that, in the world of, kind of we'll call it B2B selling, there's multiple people involved in the decision process.
Yeah.
And whether that's someone from legal or procurement, IT, security, operations, finance. I mean, so the key is to identify every single person who has ever been involved in a decision for your product, and then map out all of their priorities. Because here's the challenge that we face. And this is why deals push. Right, we go back to the original statement of our number one competitor is dead no decision. The reason why deals stall or you hit the dead no decision phase of the process is because you as the seller haven't done enough to build alignment amongst that buying group.
Yeah.
Right, because if you think about all the people that I just mentioned, they all have totally different priorities.
Yes.
Like I bring a deal to the table. I'm like, oh my gosh, this software is totally going to change how we sell, and it's going to help us, retool our whole process and give us insights that we never had before, blah, blah. And everybody else in the company is like going, great. We're actually focused on being cash flow positive, and so we can't spend this kind of money. Like, oh, but it'll save us money in the long run, and blah, 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 right? But so how do I get everybody on the same page? Right. As a rep, you got to try and anticipate that.
You have to, because the person you're 100%. Talking to, didn't go to decision-making class.
Right. That's true. It's almost like, and this is, I feel like I'm a broken record in this, but we have to teach our customers how to buy our software. Yes. We make a massive assumption that because, SaaS has been around for, 15, 16 years, right? We just make this assumption that everyone knows how to buy a SaaS application. But the reality is not everybody knows how to buy your SaaS application.
Right.
Right? Which is different.
I bet a lot of your founders will check with you on some of the products they're buying.
Yeah,
You're an influencer in your portfolio companies.
100%.
Yeah.
If they want to go out and buy, of course, for our companies, we recommend our other companies products.
You have an interest in that,
right? Yeah. And we have an interest in, when they all get the MCAP family discount. And so, but clearly if they're thinking like, hey, we need to buy, we need to buy a sales engagement platform because we're ramping up our SDRs, our BDRs, or our AEs need a better way to communicate and engage with all of the customers that they're reaching out to, of course, we don't but default by SalesLoft, hello, best product in the market. But I am part of that buying group now. So if you think about that, as we were talking about before, there are people even outside of the organization that you don't even know can influence a decision that's being made. I could put a stop on, not saying that I have this much power or that I do this, but I could easily influence one of our companies to halt a buying decision they're about to make and help them rethink why they're buying this product and the impact it's likely going to have. And I have my perspective or opinion about different technologies out there. And so now I become part of that buying group. So how do you influence me?
You certainly have to be aware of it. So if they're selling
100%.
Into your portfolio and they're competing against one of your portfolio members, that's going to be an issue.
Yep, 100%. And so the interesting thing is, in terms of like helping to build consensus within an organization, the other thing too is if you think about building consensus in an organization as the AE, like I know all the people that are in the buying group, I know all their priorities, I've aligned them all, I've been able to get them all together in a meeting. That means I've anchored around one particular person, which we'll talk about in a second. I call them the mobilizers. They're the person that actually has clout and a willingness to actually get everybody together and the power to get everybody together. But once I do that, think about this. Now I know all the players. For the expansion opportunity, way easier. Way
Yes.
easier. Because imagine if I just sold to let's say I just sold to the head of the mid-market sales team, and they had enough power to spend, we'll call it 10 grand on a credit card, or maybe they had a budget up to 20 grand. So it's like, great, I got them to do the deal, won it quickly. That was easy. Now there's an opportunity to potentially expand because looking at the account that's got a ton of white space. But the reality is I didn't get anybody else involved. And so now it's basically back to square one. I've got to rethink my entire approach to this account. Because to do a bigger deal, I got to get more people involved. I got to find out that buying group.
Right. And this is the part of the sale that so many people don't really understand. They think I won the evaluation, I have somebody who has a proposal, I gave a discount to, they say they're going to do it, but they have zero economic authority.
Yeah, for sure. Sure. And now when you say economic authority, does that mean that they're the ones that can write the check or sign the PO?
Well, let's talk about that, because you have probably more insight into this than certainly I do. Say a founder, CEO, what's their sign off before they have to check with the board?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't know if there's actually a set answer, because
that's a great answer, because now people think that's the final decision maker.
Right, that's the thing, right? So you do, let's say you're trying to sell to one of our companies and it's a $150,000 deal. What's likely going to happen if it's an early stage company, anywhere all the way up to Series C, they're likely going to reach out to their community and say, hey, does this make sense? Yeah. Right? This is a big decision. I want to make sure that we're actually making the right decision, right? It's not like they didn't necessarily need the board's approval to do that.
Right, but they want consensus. They want.
But certainly they're going to, guess what? In the next board meeting, that's part of your cost.
Yeah, where'd that 100K go?
Yeah, like, wait a minute, what's that line item right there? What did you guys buy? And next thing you know, they're like, oh, we bought SAP. And you're like, what? Startup, what are you doing? Right?
And this is it. And then you back it down. Okay, if the CEO doesn't really have a defined sign off, then what is a VP? I mean, I was a VP at a Fortune 50 company. I had zero sign off. If I couldn't put it on my corporate credit card, I couldn't buy it.
100%. And I think the challenge is, of course, ultimately everybody's trying to figure out like what those levels are of approval within an organization, and it's constantly changing. One year I had approval to, it was up to 50 grand, and then the next year I had approval up to 5 grand. Right? It's just constantly right, because all of a sudden it's like, whoa, we got to control our costs here a little bit. So we're taking away some of that authority for all of you. You're like, what? Okay, that's fine. So they'll put more kind of controls around how a buying decision is actually made. And ultimately, as a salesperson, we're trying to understand that. And I think what does us a disservice is we ask that question, right? We ask the question thinking that this is going to give me the answer, which is, well,
that's the danger of asking it. Yeah.
Right. Have you made a decision like this before? Have you bought SaaS before? How'd that happen? How did you do that? Yeah. And again, it changes. So, last year, this was our process. This year, this is our process. But again, maybe some of the people that you're talking to don't even know that there's a process. So my recommendation is always to coach and guide them based on the way other people just like them have bought from us. Right. So, hey, I was just working with Intel, over the last 6 months, and it was a very, very similar situation. Here are some of their problems. Here was their process. I'm curious, does that feel similar to your organization?
Yes.
Right. And now all of a sudden they're like, hadn't really thought about, I totally forgot about legal. Or because I forgot about compliance.
Yeah, because we're just hoping that mobilizer can, take that football all the way through the goalpost without any guidance, help, or coaching.
100%. And you brought a really important word, is the mobilizer, which is also different than a champion. Be really clear about that. A mobilizer is different than a champion, and the fact that a champion's like the person that's going to feed you all the intel that you need, right? But a champion is not usually, possible, but it's not usually the person who can actually rally the troops and get everybody together in a meeting, all 6, 7, 8, 9 people in that buying group. because in many ways they don't actually have the right level of clout or authority to actually call a meeting where, say, the CFO has to come, the CIO, the CISO, right, your head of customer success, whatever it may be, just a lot of really important people. Now the challenge is what you have to understand with a mobilizer. In order for them to call that meeting, in order for them to make a recommendation of your product, you have to recognize that the reason why they typically don't do it, or they say, well, yeah, I'll reach out to this person, and you never hear anything back, is because they're not willing to take a risk. Because to put their neck out on the line for your solution, it's a risk.
It's a big risk.
What happens if the 8 or 9 other people that I brought together in this meeting look at me like I'm a madman with my head cut off? What if we make this, I push to make this decision and it fails? And by the way, that happened to me at Box a couple times. I was like, good Lord, I can't bring another solution to the table. I'm early. I'm brought to the table. They didn't really work. And I was like, oh.
Yeah, here he comes again.
Right, as the salesperson, you're like, oh, I'll work with you. We'll make sure that you're wildly successful, blah, blah, blah. But the reality is, it wasn't the product issue. It was actually an internal issue that we had as an organization. We just didn't have the bandwidth or the capacity to drive change management in the organization, right? Yeah. And so while we got bought in, we couldn't get what I call sell through. And so the mobilizer who's going to take that risk, the job is to help make them feel so safe and so secure by putting their neck out for you.
Yeah. Hey, this has been a great conversation, Doug. Where do people go to connect with you and learn more about your work?
Well, you can always go to mcap.com. So that's E as in Edward, MCAP.com, and go to our thought section. And I write a ton up there. You can find me on Twitter at Doug Lindis. Find me on LinkedIn. Anywhere. I'm all over the place.
I hope you enjoyed that. I hope it makes you think differently about how these decisions get made. What we always think is, we go to the big cheese, the leader, the CEO, the president, and they can just make a decision immediately. But what do? They ask other people's opinions. They reach out to their network. They know that they're not the smartest person in the room about everything all the time. They may be very good at their job, but they can't know about every little bit of technology or service. So they ask their friends. They ask people they trust. They ask people on their board. And this is something that it's hard to predict, but we have to be aware that it's happening, that there's political influencers, there's external influencers, and we have to be aware that this is happening and be an influencer within the account. This is why we have to build trust. We have to demonstrate that we care more about them than just getting the order. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please make sure you're checking out Pipedrive. Pipedrive's just crushing it. It's really an enterprise CRM right now. They made this shift. They've got whole kinds of integrations with all the other things you need, dialers, e-signing, prospecting tools. It's really a powerful CRM. It's what I've been using for probably 3 or 4 years here at Brutal Truth headquarters. Yeah. The enterprise is using it, and we love it. So check it out. You get 60 days free with the Brutal Truth coupon code. And just for the 2 things that are add-ons, the scheduler, where you can share your schedule through email, so people can just pick a time on your calendar that you have open. So just block off an afternoon for this type of call or that type of call. And the email tracking, so you can tell when somebody opens your email. That's all built in. You just can't beat it. All in one product. I really love it. So check it out, pipedrive.com. Here's an update on the courses. I've added this new thing, which I'm going to call deal coaching. So if you buy the Closing the Complex Sale course, you get unlimited 30-minute deal coaching sessions, as long as I can record it on Zoom. So you can I'll turn the recorder on after we discuss any proprietary information. After I turn the recorder off, we can talk about any proprietary information. But during the call, just keep it generic. It doesn't matter who the customer is, it doesn't matter who you are, and it doesn't matter what you're selling. When you fit it into your map to money, that's what matters. And this is what's really going to be a game changer, I think, for everybody through the rest of the year. So if you order it by the end of March, I'll keep the prices the same, and I'll throw that in. How's that? You can't beat it. Unlimited deal coaching. From me. Not from, the housekeeper or anything. It's me. And you know what? All I care about is making sure that you are super successful. So talking through a deal with someone else is the most powerful way to get a different opinion on the deal. Doesn't mean you're going to win it, but it makes you think about things you're not thinking about it. When we're in a deal, even me, everybody, we're in the fog of war. We're not seeing some of the obvious things because we're emotionally attached to it. So make sure you go to b2brevenue.com and sign up there if you want to get a time on my calendar to talk it through to see if it's the right thing for you. You can pick a time, a 15-minute block. Please be serious. If you're not sure, listen to a bunch of podcasts that say, hey, does this sound like the type of sale that I'm in? It may not be. If you're in B2C or door-to-door, it might not be for you. I get it. But it's pretty much for the complex sale, multiple decision makers, large deal size, and long sales process, certainly more than a single call. So check that out. Also, YouTube. I'm putting all my videos up on YouTube for your perusal at your leisure. Brian Burns Sales on YouTube. Brian G. Burns on LinkedIn. I post a video pretty much every day when I'm out walking, working out. I just can't stop thinking about sales and making my listeners money. That's my mission. So tell somebody about the brutal truth about sales and selling, and we'll see you next time.